California, we're now learning 50 people are dead as a result of the wildfires that rage across that state. Many more missing, others returning to where their homes once stood to find nothing left. Meanwhile, another fire erupting overnight near San Bernardino, so we are head live in a moment on the fire lines with the very latest on that ongoing story yet again today. First, however, Defense Secretary James Mattis goes to the U.S.-Mexico border at this hour as the immigration crisis unfolds there. He will get a first-hand look. What will he do? What will he say? We wait to hear that on Bill Hemmer live inside of America's Newsroom on a Wednesday. How you doing?
Good morning to you, Bill. I'm Sandra Smith. Secretary Mattis expected to arrive in McAllen, Texas, just about 2 hours from now, as thousands of troops are deployed to the border. Meanwhile, we are now learning that the first group of illegal immigrants who left Honduras 1 month ago are now starting to reach Tijuana.
So from the White House, correspondent Kevin Cork has the story from the North Lawn. Kevin, good morning there. How many troops are going? Is it safe to say that more are still on the way? Where does that stand?
No doubt about that. Bill, good morning to you. About 2,800 troops are already in Texas. The Defense Secretary will meet with them. By the way, that's part of about 7,000 or so troops that we expect to be making their way between Texas, Arizona, and California. And so obviously they are all going there to support Customs and Border Protection operations along the border. We're talking about those soldiers and Marines all across the American Southwest. Now, today, the Defense Secretary plans to meet with those service members currently deployed in support of the Southwest Border Mission. That's a mission, by the way, that largely is meant to maintain an orderly engagement of the thousands who are said to be coming up from Honduras through Mexico.
There's been no change to that mission at this time. We'll have to see what the future holds. But right now, that's the only mission I have.
Meanwhile, there are reports that there are groups of migrants who, Bill, have splintered off from the main group of that caravan, and that group is said to have already reached Tijuana, a clarion call to action, according to the former ICE director.
Game on. I mean, I think the administration is ready. CBP has, of course, got a lot more resources down there, with the military building the infrastructure and the fencing. You got a lot more inspectors and asylum officers down there from CIS ready to start these interviews if they come to a port of entry.
As is customary, the Defense Secretary will get an assessment, even a threat assessment, from commanders and leaders on the ground. The senior leadership cadre obviously will want to make sure that he is aware and abreast of everything that they've seen so far. That should happen later today, Bill.
Meantime, we got a rare rebuke from the First Lady's office late yesterday for the dismissal of a staffer, Kevin. What can you tell us about this?
Well, this is a senior staffer who is involved with national security matters, and this is an unusual circumstance to say the least. Generally speaking, Bill, certainly in covering the Trump White House, you simply don't hear very much from the First Lady's office. And certainly yesterday it was a bit of a surprise to hear that the First Lady's office is specifically calling out a staffer, saying that they don't want her on the team moving forward. Now, you and I have also talked about this idea that once we get past the midterms, there's lots of shaking up at the White House. That's not uncommon, but you're talking to East Wing stuff. It's pretty rare to see something spill out publicly. We're talking about a senior staffer named Mira Ricardel. She's a national security staffer. She's got a reputation inside the White House for having, let's just say, sharp elbows. That may have been her undoing in the First Lady's office. The First Lady's staff issuing a statement yesterday. Let me share just part of it, very sharp. It says, "It is the position of the office of the First Lady that she, Ricardel, no longer deserves the honor of serving in this White House." As is often the case, strong personalities can create divided loyalties, and while she remains in the job at this hour, it is clear that the First Lady's office wants her out. And to use an oft-heard expression around here, we'll see what happens.
Right on.
Back to you.
Thank you, Kevin. The day is early, as we say, from the North Lawn. Thank you, sir. Much more on immigration coming up throughout our show. Texas AG Ken Paxton is here live today, and the former acting ICE Director Thomas Homan is live in our 11 a.m. Eastern Time hour as well. So stay tuned. Sandra.
Meanwhile, another big story happening this hour. More drama in the Sunshine State as the recount there continues. The voting machines in Palm Beach County overheating, forcing officials to recount about 175,000 early votes. And they're getting an extension of 5 days in the state's deadline. Senator Marco Rubio expressing frustration with this overall process.
The reason why election lawyers get involved is to make sure as many votes as possible for their client is counted and as many votes as possible for their opponent is disqualified. And when you have an election office this incompetent and this law breaking, it creates enormous opportunity for those sorts of arguments to be made. And suddenly the election's decided by a judge or by lawyers, not by voters the way they're supposed to be.
Griff Jenkins live in Lauderhill, Florida. Griff, what is the latest with the ballot sorting and the counting?
Well, Sandra, good morning. If you look at the machines here in Broward County, they're actually right now being cleaned and tuned up a little bit because they finished sorting everything, and they've actually counted 299,000 ballots out of the total 715. These machines are a little different from the ones in Palm Beach. The ones in Palm Beach are a little older. They can only count one race at a time. Here, we can count all of the races in the recount. And with only over 300,000 or so ballots left to count, which they'll start momentarily this morning, we believe it is going to be pretty easy. We believe that they're going to hit that deadline of 3 p.m. Thursday. And the election supervisor here, Dr. Brenda Snipes, reassuring us yesterday when she took to the mics. Take a listen.
Are you concerned about meeting Thursday's deadline?
Well, I'm concerned about us working steadily in order to meet it. So we won't miss that deadline. It's too critical. We won't miss it.
And we've seen 17 boxes of over and under votes being secured here. Those are the ones that will be hand counted should that margin be so narrow that we move to a hand recount after the deadline on Thursday. Sandra?
What a process playing out there, Griff. A flurry of lawsuits between the candidates. What's the latest with that?
There's at least 9 lawsuits floating between Governor Scott and Senator Nelson. Senator Nelson's of note because he's actually joining a lawsuit now asking that the recount deadlines be extended in all 67 counties. We'll find out if there's any more developments on that in hearings later today. At the end of the day, many of the 65 of 67 counties have finished their recounts. Miami-Dade, the most recent, that just finished last night. Sandra?
Griff Jenkins, more on this coming up. Thank you.
Byron York now joins us, chief political correspondent, Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor. Byron, how you doing there? We can talk Florida.
Good morning, Bill.
We can talk leadership in Washington, D.C. In a matter of moments. We're going to see Mitch McConnell welcome the newly elected senators there in Washington. Rick Scott will be there. Lindsey Graham was asked about his newfound stardom on the Hill. Watch this. Stand by. Here's a come.
I've been around a pretty good while here. These things come and go, and I'm just going to keep trying to find as many problems to solve as possible and put judges on the bench.
On we go. With that, Mitch McConnell writes this op-ed, foxnews.com. Senator Mitch McConnell, here's the headline. Will Dems work with us or simply put partisan politics ahead of the country? How's it going to go, Byron? Size it up.
Well, first we have to see who is going to be leading the House. Nancy Pelosi looks like she has the votes to become Speaker. We have seen some groups like the Problem Solvers Caucus, a more centrist group, the Progressive Caucus, a more left group inside the Democratic Conference in the House. We have seen them express unhappiness, dissatisfaction with the idea of Nancy Pelosi becoming the Speaker of the House. But you're hearing a phrase around Capitol Hill a lot these days, which is you can't beat somebody.
Now overseeing it comes under fire. Senator Mike Lee is a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which could present a bill on the Senate floor. He joins us with his thoughts next.
Looking forward to that. Nancy Pelosi, meanwhile, trying to drum up a lot of support. Man, they are whining and dining them down in D.C., Sandra. We'll tell you why. Democrat Dan Kildee out of Michigan joins us in about 30 minutes on the expectations for a Democratic-controlled House. Coming up.
One of the main arguments that was being offered by those who now are suggesting new leadership was that there was no way that the Democrats will ever be in the majority if Nancy Pelosi is the leader. Come January 3rd, we're going to be in the majority.
Do you know which investment could be your best performer this year? Stock?
Eliminated if we had a nominee. And my understanding is the White House is starting to look into that.
I don't think it's fair to the man to bash him before he even has a chance to find the men's room. He's done nothing that should make anybody worry.
Another classic. Members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, a strong reaction on the criticism directed at the acting AG, Matthew Whitaker, as his appointment faces its first legal challenge from the state of Maryland. My next guest is on the Judiciary Committee, Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee. And, sir, good morning to you. Welcome back to our program here.
Thank you. Good morning.
What's the question at hand for Whitaker?
Well, the question at hand involves whether or not he can appropriately be appointed as interim attorney general. This is an issue on which there are reasonable arguments on both sides. I'm looking forward to the Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel releasing a memorandum that it's apparently prepared on this subject. The Office of Legal Counsel has some of the best lawyers in the government on this issue, and I look forward to fleshing out their arguments.
With that as a backdrop, do you support him or not?
Yes, I certainly support him, and the question that will be addressed in this Office of Legal Counsel memorandum is whether or to what extent, in what way, the president has authority to appoint him as interim attorney general.
But you believe the president has the authority to appoint the attorney general at this
I think that's the central question. I think, like I say, I think there are legitimate arguments on both sides. I think this could end up being a close legal question, which is why I want to see the OLC memorandum.
Okay, interesting. We kind of had a split decision here in our program yesterday on that very issue. Senator Feinstein writes this, the Democrat from California. The circumstances surrounding Attorney General Sessions' departure raise serious questions, including whether the appointment is lawful and the possible impact on Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. It's critically important that we understand why the Attorney General was forced out of his position. I guess you're kind of asking that same question, aren't you?
No, that's actually not the same question I'm asking at all. I don't think that's the legitimate question. Whether the president decides it's time for a new course correction really is his call and his alone to make. That's not our call. If they want to quibble about the extent of the president's power to name an interim attorney general, that's a different question. I don't think that's really attached to the question of what the president's subjective mindset was when he made that decision.
Okay, what she and some Democrats, the case they're making is quite obvious. They're afraid that he's going to interfere with the Mueller probe. And now you got Senators Coons and Flake with this proposal before the Senate as to whether or not the Mueller probe should be protected. Is that a good idea? Would you support that, Senator?
No. I voted against similar legislation earlier this year. I think that improperly interferes with the president's constitutional authority as the head of the executive branch. I would not support that. And look, the fact that somebody has fears about what somebody might do in office is not a good reason to suggest that that person should not hold that office. If they've got another legal argument, that's fine, but that strikes me as a particularly bad argument.
Okay, what is your sense as the new Congress comes to Washington about whether or not this has moved forward? Or do you get a sense, based on some of the reports, that written questions could be at hand right now for the West Wing? And if so, are we closer to the end? Or can you say that?
To the end of the Mueller investigation? Yes. I certainly hope that we are at the end of it. From everything I'm hearing, we're likely to be close to the end. And I look forward to reviewing his report. I'd like to see him wrap it up and to see what he has to say.
Okay, you're making a case, too, for criminal justice reform. I just want to get you a chance to tell our audience about what that's all about and how you think it could move forward in this new Congress.
This is a project I've been working on for 8 years, ever since I've been in the United States Senate. This is a bipartisan effort to give federal judges some much-needed discretion in a number of cases, particularly involving relatively low-level, nonviolent drug offenders who sometimes get caught in a web that sometimes results in ridiculously large, aggressive minimum mandatory sentences. There was a young man in Utah named Weldon Angelos who was sentenced to 55 years in prison for selling 3 small user quantities of marijuana in a 72-hour period. It's examples of cases like that where we need to give judges additional discretion and let them be judges. That's what our bill does, and we're looking forward to meeting with President Trump at 3:30 today to discuss that.
Will he support it?
I hope that he will. I have confidence that he might, and if he does, I predict that this will pass out of both houses of Congress and be signed into law this year by President Trump.
We'll be waiting for more news from the West Wing on that today. Senator, thank you for your time. Mike Lee is the Republican from Utah. By the way, how does it feel to have Mitt Romney as the junior senator from your state?
I'm looking forward to that, as is Senator-elect Romney. He told me that at his age, he welcomes any title that comes with the word junior.
Right. We've got a clip next hour that you'll get a kick out of, and so too our viewers at home. So stand by. Thank you, Senator, for your time today. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Hamas firing at least 400 rockets into Israel as the IDF shoots down at least 150 of them. The latest details on this developing situation there. Plus, there's this. A new fast-moving fire erupting overnight in California, where entire communities have been virtually wiped out. We're live on the ground with a close look at the efforts there to contain these flames. Next.
If a dirty
The Senate side of Congress, Mitch McConnell meeting with the newly elected Republican senators. Of note, to his left, Rick Scott from Florida. Of note, to his right, Josh Hawley, Missouri, Mitt Romney, Utah, Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee, and Mike Braun from the state of Indiana. I just want to hear a moment. Are there words spoken? I don't believe there were. But Rick Scott is very interesting, Sandra. He left Florida. He said he would be there over the weekend. He was making a decision. He decided late on Sunday night that he would go to Washington, D.C. and appear for this moment.
Senate race. Oh, here we go.
It's a lot better to have a big freshman class than not. And so we're here this morning to welcome our 6 new Republican senators that allowed us to continue our majority. And we'll be heading across the way here shortly to elect the leadership team for the next 2 years.
Governor Scott, do you still contend that there's fraud going on in Florida with this recount?
All right, everyone, thank you very much. That's it. That's it. Thanks, folks. Thank you. All right, thank you guys.
Pretty much the critical question. It went without answer. Senator-elect from North Dakota, too, Kramer as well in the screen there. So just wanted to share that with you. It's going down today in Washington on the Senate side. There's big doings on the House side as well. We'll bring that
By the way, Scott will then vote this morning in the Senate Republican leadership elections. All House freshmen then will gather on the House steps for their class photo. So an interesting photo moment.
Well, one way you win elections is by declaring victory and forcing the other side to catch up with you. And that's Rick Scott's strategy right now. So we'll get you down to Broward County a bit later in our program today.
Meanwhile, we're watching these California wildfires, survivors dealing with a heartbreaking reality. They're seeing everything in their world reduced to ashes. Wildfires continue to rage on both ends of the state. 50 people now confirmed dead, dozens of others still missing, and thousands of buildings burnt to the ground. Jonathan Hunt's live in Malibu with the latest there. Jonathan, the National Guard now being called in to help in the search for any possible survivors or bodies.
Yeah, that's up in the Camp Fire in Northern California, where they're slowly transitioning, Sandra, from a firefighting mission to a body recovery mission. The task of that is literally overwhelming the sheriff's department, so they've asked the National Guard to come in and help, because obviously if there are any more bodies there, they want to have them removed before any of the residents are allowed back in to take a look at what remains of their homes. And we have been hearing from some of the evacuees who say the reason they believe that so many died in the Camp Fire is simply there wasn't time to get out. Listen here.
It happened so quickly. You know, we had trained for this for years and years and years. We knew Paradise would burn. You know, it wasn't, is it going to burn? It's just a matter of time. You know, when will it burn and how bad will it burn? And this is beyond, any comprehension.
And we're told, Sandra, that there are still up to 200 people in the area of Paradise, California, who remain unaccounted for. Sandra?
They're in Southern California, Jonathan. How's it looking where you are?
A lot better down here in Southern California. Favorable weather conditions beginning to move in now. They're getting a real grip on the Woolsey fire, which did so much damage here. We are seeing some interesting images from Geospatial Intelligence. That is a company that provides satellite images to help insurance companies process claims. Take a look at the before and after pictures there. They are fascinating to see the damage it did. Those particular pictures in the area of Thousand Oaks outside side of L.A. But just as a sign that we're certainly not out of the woods here yet, we had another fire breakout overnight, the Sierra fire, about 55 miles, a direct shot east from downtown L.A. That is now 147 acres, so still issues for the firefighters here, Sandra.
Jonathan Hunt from Malibu for us this morning. Thank you.
Recount drama continues in Florida. Two high-profile cases hanging in the balance at this hour. Both sides trying to claim victory. We're going to talk to Rick Scott's advisor in a moment. Let you know where that campaign stands.
Plus, that jackpot of $1.5 billion remains unclaimed at this hour. Who is sitting on this bundle of dough?
Pay attention.
Only days left for you to be.
Fox News alert: the Florida recount hitting a snag after the voting machines in Palm Beach County overheated. Election officials receiving a 5-day extension to meet a deadline this week so they can fix the problems that they're having there. Meanwhile, Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi says Democratic Senator Bill Nelson should call it a day in his race against Rick Scott.
Florida law expressly and unambiguously states that you must have signature verification. They want to change the law after the ballots have all been cast and go back retroactively and change our law, which is it's ridiculous. And Bill Nelson just needs to take a deep breath and concede.
Joining me now is Gail Gitcho, advisor to Rick Scott. She joins us this morning as Rick Scott, as we just saw a few moments ago, is on Capitol Hill alongside Mitch McConnell. Even though the Senate race has not been called there yet, he decided to show this morning. Gail, what was the strategy there?
Well, he is the next senator from Florida. I mean, he's ahead by an insurmountable number of votes. He's still ahead of Bill Nelson by 12,500 votes. So he has every right to be in Florida and stand there with his colleagues because he is going to be the next senator from Florida, whether that's determined tomorrow or in a couple of days from now. But ultimately, Rick Scott will take his place in the Senate in Florida. And let me just correct one thing that I heard earlier that you mentioned about the deadline. The deadline for the ballots to be recounted still stands for tomorrow at 3 p.m. We know that the Palm Beach County supervisor is working on recounting the ballots that were problematic because
obviously
of the
machines. The snag that was hit was these machines are overheating. The people that can actually fix these machines are not even local or on the premises. They've got to fly them in there. So what does Rick Scott want to see as far as a deadline extension?
Well, there's no reason to have a deadline extension because that's what Florida law says. So here's what we know so far. We know that those machines acted up, and we know that they are working on recounting those ballots that were part of the machine acting up. So the deadline still stands to be 3 p.m. tomorrow. So all of the ballots are expected to be counted by then. If the ballots are not counted by then we know that Florida law has a fallback, and that fallback would allow for the tally that stood before the recount started to be the actual tally. So that's what we know so far. But again, Sandra, the bigger picture here, there's so many distractions that are coming out of Washington, and there's even more distractions that are coming out of Palm Beach and Broward counties. But what we know for sure is that this 12,500 vote lead is insurmountable to Bill Nelson.
Right,
so tomorrow.
Go ahead, finish your thought.
Thank you. So tomorrow, when we know that there's going to be a tally that is not going to close the gap between those 12,500 votes, Bill Nelson is going to have a choice to make.
All right, let's hear
hear
from Bill Nelson in this clip here.
Thank you.
He's been using his power as governor to try to undermine the voting process. He's tried to get the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to intimidate local supervisors of election.
I want to get your response to that, Gail.
It just didn't make any sense. You know, we've seen a lot of bizarre press conferences this year. That has to be among the most bizarre. Bill Nelson came out of hiding. He went and he held a press conference with Chuck Schumer, where they had talking points that were written by PR professionals that just don't hold any water. And Chuck Schumer obviously knows nothing about Florida law because Rick Scott doesn't have control over the ballot counting process. There are 67 counties. Each of those counties are in charge of the ballot counting process. So there's really nothing for Rick Scott to recuse himself from. It's just really a bizarre thing that happened, and I wouldn't even call that a press conference. It was more like a hostage situation with Bill Nelson making a weird statement and then Chuck Schumer shuffling him off the stage. I think what we're seeing now is that this is no longer about Bill Nelson, but this is about Chuck Schumer and the Democrats trying to change Florida law so that they have a better shot at winning Florida in 2020. That's what this is.
I mean, it's fascinating to watch this all play out. And a few moments ago, that photo opportunity with Mitch McConnell there on Capitol Hill, where Rick Scott was standing, a reporter shouted out a question: "Are you still claiming fraud in the Florida midterms?" The Rick Scott chose not to answer that question. There is a flurry of lawsuits between the two candidates. Finally, can you just update us on where things stand with that?
Yeah, it's real simple. The lawsuits that are coming out of Rick Scott's campaign is designed to make sure that Florida law is followed. The lawsuits that are coming out of Bill Nelson's lawyers are to make sure that Florida law is not followed and that invalid and fraudulent ballots are counted.
The American people, I'm sorry, we have a bit of a delay here. They watch this mess playing out in Florida, and they just wonder, how do we not end up here again? Or what needs to be changed?
Well, certainly the Palm Beach and Broward County have been the problem counties of the entire state for a long period of time. It's unfortunate that Florida is taking the rap for the bad behavior of these two counties. But 67 counties were able to get this right, and these two counties just didn't get it right. So that's kind of where we are right now.
There is a lot going on, and we're all watching it. Gail Gitcho, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.
And coming up next hour, Katherine Harris, former Florida Congresswoman and the state election supervisor during the 2000 recount, will be our headliner this morning. She will join us live in studio.
Looking forward to that. Meanwhile, though, the post-election battle still playing out in Georgia. The governor's race there, Democrat Stacey Abrams saying that Brian Kemp's plan. And I think some of us who take that more moderate approach because we want to get things done, not so much because we're not progressive, but we want to get things done. It's our responsibility to try to direct the caucus in a way that's constructive and that actually moves the country forward. That's why most of us ran for these offices in the first place, not to do battle with people across the aisle. My sense is you're looking down the road 2 years as well, and you're thinking what can win in 2020. Because, listen, it's no secret that you want to flip the White House as well. And so how do you strike the balance to deliver a message to people back home in Michigan that they should go with you?
I think good government is good politics. And if we can demonstrate that we're willing to govern in a way that really addresses what people are thinking about in their own homes, they'll reward us with a continued majority. If we don't do that, if we essentially are the other side of what has been a very partisan Republican coin, I think we would bear the wrath of the voters. And I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that from happening.
Just give me one example of what you think can go through in the next Congress.
Well, I think infrastructure. I represent a city, the city of Flint, which knows a lot about what happens when infrastructure fails. This is a bipartisan interest. It's something that is unavoidable, and I think we would be really wise to lead with a bipartisan infrastructure initiative.
Dan Kildee, thank you for your time. I hope you come back, okay? And to the rest of your Democratic colleagues, the invitation is wide open. Thank you, sir, for being here today.
Thank you, Bill.
Investigators in Ohio making arrests in a bizarre and gruesome case. 4 family members charged in the grisly murder of 8 people from a different family, shot execution style in their home. A live report on this next.
When did you on a growing operation? But now Ohio law enforcement is quashing that theory, saying this family might have been executed over child custody. The suspects have been identified as George Wagner, his wife Angela, and their 2 adult sons, George and Jake Wagner. Authorities say Jake had a daughter with the youngest female victim, Hannah Roden, and something there might have sparked this. Ohio's Attorney General says the Wagner spent a lot of time planning the murders. The victims of the Roden family aged and ranged from 16 to 44, 7 family members and a fiance. Autopsy reports reveal all but one was shot point blank in the head, most while they slept. The father of one of the 3 children was shot 9 times with defensive wounds. Here is a 911 call from a family member.
There's blood all over the house. Okay. My brother-in-law's in the bedroom and I beat the hell out of him.
Ohio law enforcement says investigators focus obsessively over this case. All 4 family members have been charged with murder, qualifying for the death penalty. Police believe they now have the killers.
Members of one family conspired, planned, carried out, and then allegedly covered up their violent act to wipe out members of another family. They did this quickly, coldly, calmly, and very carefully, but not carefully enough.
2 family members in the accused family, or 2 grandmothers rather, have also been arrested for misleading police. Sandra.
Matt Finn, thank you.
Congress back to work in Washington, D.C., and there are some fresh faces getting a lot of attention. In about an hour, Senate Republican leadership hold a news conference. We will carry that live. Plus, more recount drama in Florida. It goes on and on. 2 major races still not called. The former Secretary of State in Florida during the recount of 2000 is Katherine Harris. And she is our headliner coming up next hour. Come on back after this.